buried inside a routine contract signing this summer is a small legal detail that's turned one of the Bulls' rotation big men into an immediate trade chip, and the front office's own stated philosophy suggests that's exactly the point. I've gone through every detail of Zach Collins' new contract, why it matters, and what it could mean for Chicago's roster going forward. Every quote, every insider report, and I'm going to break it all down for you right now. So before we get started, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, because this is a genuinely clever bit of roster engineering hiding in plain sight. Let's start with the contract detail itself, because it's a genuinely clever piece of roster building that most fans probably missed entirely. Zach Collins signed a new 2-year, $17 million contract with the Bulls this offseason. On the surface, that looks like a routine re-signing for a rotation big man. But according to a column from The Athletic's John Hollinger, the specific structure of that deal creates a real, immediate advantage for Chicago's front office. Because the new contract wasn't more than a 5% raise over his previous deal, Collins became instantly trade eligible the moment he signed, without any of the usual waiting period that normally applies to players re-signing with their own team. Hollinger's exact framing was direct. Collins wasn't necessarily worth $8 million on his own merits, but because of how that extension was specifically structured, he became a player Chicago could move immediately if the right opportunity presented itself. That's a genuinely rare piece of contract engineering, since most re-signed players end up locked in for a set waiting period before they can be traded again, a rule specifically designed to prevent teams from circumventing salary cap rules through repeated quick re-signings and trades. That detail matters enormously once you understand how Bulls lead front office executive Bryson Graham has been operating since taking over. Graham's stated message throughout this early stretch of his tenure has consistently centered on one word: flexibility. He's made clear he wants real optionality in every roster decision, rather than locking the franchise into long-term commitments that limit what Chicago can do going forward. Structuring Collins' contract specifically to preserve immediate tradability fits that exact philosophy perfectly, giving Graham a genuine asset he can use whenever the right trade opportunity comes along, rather than a player who's simply locked into the roster for 2 full seasons regardless of circumstance. It's the kind of forward-thinking, detail-oriented roster management that suggests this front office is thinking several steps ahead rather than simply making moves reactively as situations develop. So what would Chicago actually do with that flexibility? One hypothetical scenario floated by Pippen Ain't Easy involved Chicago packaging Collins' expiring adjacent salary together with guard Isaac Okoro and forward Leonard Miller in a deal to acquire forward DeAndre Hunter from the Sacramento Kings. It's just one example, not a confirmed real trade discussion, but it illustrates exactly the kind of move this front office now has the flexibility to consider. Combining multiple smaller, movable contracts into a single package to bring back a more impactful individual player is a classic team-building tactic, and Collins' contract, specifically engineered for early tradability, makes exactly that kind of combination possible almost immediately. Hunter himself represents exactly the kind of proven, two-way wing production that could genuinely elevate Chicago's roster, giving this front office real motivation to keep exploring similar packages even if this specific hypothetical never actually materializes into a real offer. There's also a broader market context worth understanding here, because it shapes how realistic these kinds of trades actually are right now. According to that same analysis, this year's offseason trade market has looked noticeably different from prior years when it comes to draft capital. NBA teams seeking multiple first-round picks in trade returns are finding that market considerably less robust than usual this specific offseason, partly due to the league's newer anti-tanking lottery rules changing how front offices value future picks in the first place. That shift means teams like Chicago may need to get more creative, using expiring or lightly appreciated contracts like Collins's, rather than counting on draft capital alone to construct a competitive trade offer for a genuinely impactful player. In a market where picks alone don't guarantee you can get a deal done, contracts engineered for flexibility like this one become genuinely valuable trade currency in their own right. It's worth remembering exactly how Collins ended up in Chicago in the first place, too, because his path here has already been a bit unusual. He arrived as part of the three-team trade centered on longtime Bulls star Zach LaVine going to the Sacramento Kings, joining Kevin Huerter and Trey Jones as the return package. That trade itself came together in a genuinely chaotic fashion. Collins, Huerter, and Jones spent their first few days in Chicago sitting in a strange kind of limbo, unsure whether they'd actually stick with the Bulls or simply get flipped again before that season's trade deadline, since head coach Billy Donovan initially opted not to play any of them at all while the front office weighed its options. Collins himself admitted at the time just how unsettling that stretch felt, saying he'd find himself checking his phone constantly for any social media update, calling his agent multiple times a day just trying to get some clarity on where he'd actually end up. It's exactly the kind of behind-the-scenes uncertainty that rarely gets discussed publicly, but clearly leaves a real, lasting impression on the players caught in the middle of it. Collins eventually settled into a real rotation role in Chicago once that initial uncertainty passed, providing genuine frontcourt length and shooting as a stretch big who could complement Nikola Vucevic in the paint. He's shown real value in pick-and-pop situations and as a secondary rim-running option, even if his rim protection numbers have remained modest throughout his career, averaging well under a block per game across most of his time in the league. Last season specifically, injuries limited his availability at points, with Collins missing time alongside several other Bulls big men, a stretch that genuinely hurt Chicago's frontcourt depth during a rough patch in the schedule where the team lost 10 of 13 games while dealing with a lengthy injury report. Now, just months after finally settling into that role, the exact contract structure of his new deal has turned him right back into trade bait, a strange full-circle moment for a player who already knows firsthand how unsettling this business can be. Step back and look at the full picture here, and this represents a genuinely sophisticated approach to roster construction from Chicago's new front office leadership. Rather than simply locking in known rotation pieces on standard extensions, Graham's group has shown a willingness to structure contracts specifically to preserve maximum future flexibility, even for players who've already proven their value within the current roster. It's the kind of quiet, behind-the-scenes roster management that rarely generates headlines the way a splashy trade or free agent signing does, but it can meaningfully shape what a front office is actually capable of doing once real trade opportunities present themselves during the season. Fans watching for the next big Bulls move might want to keep a closer eye on contract fine print going forward, since this front office has already shown it's willing to use exactly that kind of structural detail as a genuine roster-building tool. So here's where everything stands. Zach Collins' new 2-year contract with the Bulls quietly makes him immediately trade eligible, a detail that fits perfectly into new front office executive Bryson Graham's stated priority of preserving genuine roster flexibility above almost everything else. Whether that flexibility ultimately gets used to package Collins with other movable contracts in pursuit of a more impactful piece, similar to that hypothetical DeAndre Hunter scenario, or simply gets held in reserve as insurance for whenever the right opportunity comes along, this front office has clearly positioned itself to be aggressive and opportunistic rather than locked into a fixed plan. Heading into the season, it's a subtle but genuinely important signal about how this new leadership group plans to operate going forward, valuing optionality and preparedness over simply locking in the status quo. So tell me what you think. Do you think the Bulls should actively look to trade Zach Collins now that his contract makes it possible? Or is he more valuable staying in Chicago's frontcourt rotation And what kind of player do you think Chicago should realistically be targeting if they do decide to package him in a deal? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you catch every update as it happens. I'll be back soon with more Bulls news.